Welcome to Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, a podcast where we tackle the literal and figurative clutter standing between you and your healthiest and happiest life. I'm Melanie, your host, coach, and guide on this journey to help you design a life that you love. Whether it's clearing out your kitchen cabinets, untangling your digital files, or letting go of the mental blocks that hold you back, we're here to make space for what truly matters. Let's lighten up together, starting now.
So welcome back to another episode of Lighten Up, the Art of Living Clutter-Free, where we talk about all things clutter. Today's going to be one of those really heavy on the mental clutter days. I have a guest, Margaret Martin, who is a certified life coach, trauma-informed EFT practitioner, and the founder of Redesign Your Life programs, where she helps women heal from toxic, narcissistic relationships. Through her private coaching, group programs, and workshops, Margaret guides women to release emotional scars and wounds, dissolve limiting beliefs, and reclaim their voice, their power, and their self-worth. She is the author of books, The Chatter That Matters, Your Words Are Your Power, Your Chatter Matters, Journal of Gratitude, and her forthcoming book with a working title of Stepping Into Your Freedom, A Journey of Healing from Toxic Relationships. She shares examples of the damage toxic narcissist relationships can have on you. She shares her stories and those from several women, plus resources to help you heal. Known for her compassionate yet direct approach, a trusted voice for women ready to step into freedom and design a future they love, so the rest of their life is the best of their life. Margaret is active in her community. She holds various leadership roles, including member of several boards. Margaret lives in delightful Dunedin, Florida, near her 3 children and 6 grandchildren, where family gatherings can be quite fun and boisterous. I think fun and boisterous is exactly the way it should always be. Margaret, welcome to being here today.
Well, thank you so much, Melanie, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, definitely. Why don't you give us just a little background how you ended up where you are right now?
Well, so I was married to a narcissist, but did not know it at the time. And so what I found is, in talking with a lot of women, is they didn't really realize they were in a narcissistic relationship even in today's world where there's so much information out there. But back when I was married, certainly that terminology was not used. Toxic was something in chemistry, not in relationships. So I was married to this man and we ended up getting a divorce. I fought the divorce tooth and nail for a lot of different reasons. But at any rate, so go through the years and I did a lot of different healing processes to regain my belief in myself, my self-confidence, and all the things that had been eroded during that relationship. And it took a long time. I think healing is meandering. It's a meandering journey. It's never a straight, straight path. And so about 5 years ago, I got involved with various tapping, EFT tapping programs going on. And one of the discussions we had when I was on the left seat, where we're focused on whatever it is I want to achieve or get rid of. Because in tapping, you're getting rid of emotions, you're getting rid of beliefs and things like that. And so it was then I connected with doing the work I'm doing today. So I got my certification in EFT, which is emotional freedom techniques. It's tapping on various meridian points, similar to acupuncture, but it doesn't have any pain at all. It's just a little bit of tapping. The key phrase is emotional freedom because we're getting rid of the emotions, the negative beliefs. So I started focusing in because I know there are a lot of women who've been damaged, and I say deeply scarred. I am in the scar removal business because I want to help these women who are still deeply scarred. For those of us who've been in those relationships, and especially in a marriage, we are excellent in putting on that mask that says, oh, I'm doing just fine. Everything in my world is wonderful. Meanwhile, inside, you're dying in some way or another because of the gaslighting, the emotional and verbal abuse, and in some situations, physical abuse. Narcissists are abusers. They are interpersonal domestic violence abusers. October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, it's not all physical abuse. More damage happens with emotional and verbal abuse most of the time. That's what got me focused in doing this work, and I love it. I love helping people get back on track, getting rid of that guilt, that shame, all the various emotions we store.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about, you fought this divorce tooth and nail from this man who was gaslighting you and was speaking to you in toxic ways, and you didn't really discover that impact until later. Tell me about fighting the divorce.
So we started out building a business from absolute scratch, working together. And off and on through the years, I did different roles within the office. We had finally gotten to a point where we were feeling good financially. We had our money put aside. We did the things we wanted to do. He does continuing education programs within that profession, and I ran that part of the business. So I had a very active part of this business, um, and we have 3 children. And what people don't realize is, of course, not everything is bad throughout the entire relationship. And there was a lot of good times. The thing is when you finally reached where you are and feeling success, they want to toss you aside. I didn't have a different career to fall back on.
How old were your kids when you divorced?
Well, my children, the oldest 2 are 10 years apart, and so they were like 7, 9, and the oldest son in his 20s. So he was off to college. So the other 2 were quite young.
Was there any of that you have to stay together for the kids thought processes going on?
Honestly, I never thought about leaving, even though there were a lot of different abuses within the marriage. I look back now at some of the decisions I made and think, what in the hell was she thinking? Well, you're trying to hold on to a family. You're trying to hold on to what you know and what you're comfortable with. And I did have a purpose in our office and in our business because I did the payroll and bookkeeping as well as ran this other business.
One of the reasons I asked is because I am an only child and my parents divorced after I got married. So they got divorced when I was 26. And I am confident that part of it was stay together for the kid. I don't know that my life was better because they stayed together. This is all in hindsight. I'd like to think that I would have been happier if my parents were happier. All I know is that my father is most definitely a narcissist. I don't think that I fell prey to any of that as a child. But he definitely was that way with my mom.
Narcissism, like all domestic violence, it's all about power and control.
All right. Well, I want to talk about the narcissists in my life. My coaches, nothing was good enough. And I spent 4 to 5 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week with a man who I just called him mean when I was a kid, but he was a narcissist. And we got smacked in the back of our heads. And we got called fatty, chubby, hippo, beached whale, cow, every animal term that he could use. Teenage girls. And so I feel like he coached out of fear. And when I reflect back on it, I've told the story before. I'm going to tell it again because I want people to know how important it is to talk to your kids about the people that they're with many hours a day when you're not present. It is important to know these things. I was never fat. I was an athlete, but I wasn't built like the svelte Nadia Comaneci. I was this powerhouse. I tumbled and I vaulted, and we got weighed in every Monday. This man one day told me, I'll never forget the girl's name. He said, if this continues this way, I can have Patty go into the bathroom with you and she'll show you how to throw up. I was 15 years old, and the grown up in my life that I spent so much time with encouraged and eating disorder. And I think there's a real message in there. And I didn't say anything to my parents for years and years. I think I was I joined Weight Watchers to lose my 65 pounds that I had gained after I quit gymnastics. I told them then, and they were like, "Why didn't you tell us before?" And I said, "Because you guys would have yanked me out of the gym. You would have yanked me out. You wouldn't have let me be there." And as hard as he was, as mean as he was, as narcissistic as he was, as much as he yelled and smacked us in the back of our heads and said terrible things to us, still my favorite thing in the world was doing gymnastics. And I fell out of love with it, and I broke my foot, and it was a really easy way out.
Amazing how your foot at a time when you don't feel good with what's going on.
But to your point, I could have come back from that injury. I could done my time in physical therapy. I could have still been, doing upper body strength training, but it was almost like it was an invitation to, a different life after that.
Exactly.
And tell me a little bit about narcissists in the workplace.
Yeah, one of the other things I want to make sure we're clear on. People throw this word narcissist around a lot these days. Just to be clear, all toxic people or people that have toxic behavioral tendencies are not narcissists. And there are various degrees and levels of narcissism. Clarifying for everyone, they have low or no self esteem. This is why they're bullies. They have such fragile egos. They have to do things that make them feel good about themselves. Yeah, there are bosses in the workplace that are going to give you a hard time. They're going to set you up for failure. So we have the coaches, we have the bosses, we have the politicians, we have the people in professions, physicians, attorneys, ministers. How many ministers do we see? You can just look at them on social media or on TV.
It's a position of power. And I think it's more than a position of power because it's not a leader, it's your spiritual leader.
They are across all genders and all levels within organizations.
Sure.
And, they can be running the street sweeper machine or whatever it is that sweeps our streets. So they are literally everywhere, but we're seeing prime examples in our politicians. Just putting that out there. And you see the various levels of narcissism out there. The thing that's important, I want to make sure that we talk about is when you're in a situation where someone is putting they're blaming you. They never take responsibility for anything unless it's something that actually was good, that actually came out right. And they will
Sure.
they will be overachievers on that. But then for something else, that goes wrong that they did, they're going to blame it on somebody else. And we see that if you pay any attention. And what we need to know is when you are in a situation where you have somebody that is personally attacking you, don't engage. It is hard to just be quiet. Don't defend yourself. Don't engage with them whatsoever because that's what they want. It's all about them being in control.
So I appreciate you sharing don't do's. And that's very valuable. What are the do's?
The do's are setting boundaries and boundaries can be hard. And so if you need to set boundaries, make sure. I always say never put yourself in harm's way when you're setting a boundary. And if you need help, reach out. And especially if our domestic violence centers, outreach centers have so many resources, therapists, coaches, they can help you as well. And I spent 5 years working within our local domestic violence outreach center. I didn't work in the safe house. I worked with survivors. I led a weekly group. So I understand all the various aspects of domestic interpersonal violence. And so don't engage with them. Do stand your ground, meaning being able to just either turn around and, with a boundary, it's like, if you're going to continue with this, I'm leaving, and give yourself the space to do it. And I've done that. I did that with my former husband once we had a situation going on and where I actually took him back to court, which totally pissed him off.
I'll bet.
Yeah. And so it was an interesting time of harassment too, not only by him, but by his wife. And so, anyway, he would call me up and, it's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of situation where we were talking about the kids. And because I will say, he was very good about doing his end of the bargain. He had the kids when he was supposed to have them. He paid his alimony and child support. He did those things correctly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And because if he didn't, he knew I'd definitely take him back to court, and his ego couldn't handle that, especially if it got out in the community. So, because at that time, our particular area was not as big as it is today. And so it's being able to set the boundary to say if he started yelling at me and calling me names and different things. And I told him, I said, hey, I'm not going to listen to this. If you want to get back on track, I'll be happy to stay on the phone. Otherwise, I'm going to hang up. So he started out again, and I said, okay, I'm hanging up. Click. Well, of course, he called back, and this was before caller ID, and I just let it ring, and it went to voicemail, and he left some nasty message. And so, they'll do anything they can to get to you, and they will call you names. They will even, they'll write in these days text messages, emails, any way they can get to you to make you feel vulnerable, scared, when they are the ones that are truly scared, because when they don't have someone to control and manipulate, and that they're masters. And that was one of the other things in my relationship. It's like I didn't realize how much I was being manipulated.
So, Margaret, let me ask you, can narcissists be changed or cured or whatever?
And can narcissism be changed or cured if they want to? But it's them. I remember one of in the EFT certification process, we have to do case studies. And I remember one of the women I was working with said her narcissist ex-husband actually did get some help once he realized what was going on. That is very rare, because people will say narcissistic disorder, a disorder. And this is one of the other things I have one of the best books is Dr. Ramani's book. It's where I got a lot of my information I share. So the thing is, when you describe somebody as having the narcissistic personality disorder, you can't really call them that unless they have been diagnosed by a therapist or a psychologist or a psychiatrist. We use these terms PSTD, and things like that. A lot of the disorder things randomly when people are not actually diagnosed with a true disorder. They've got those tendencies, they've got those habits.
Right. I think that comes up a lot, that people are self-diagnosing a lot, whether my memory is bad and I get distracted, I must have ADHD. And that may be the case for a lot of people. But when you have been diagnosed with it, for those of you listening, I'm pointing to myself, it can feel like it's not taken seriously enough because everyone is taking ownership for that. I use that as an example. It's just like you had said before, that in terms of like narcissism being overused, the word being overused, gaslight is like one of those things. Like, everybody says that everybody's gaslighting them when it is in specific situations. And you said it before, it goes hand in hand with narcissism. Okay, so someone actually wants to change, or they see the need to change. You have faith that change can happen?
Yes, if they realize that they've done a lot of harm and damage, and it's not going to happen overnight, like, any of us who are trying to shift in our lives. But they have to have the desire. And so if they don't have the desire, and most of them don't, everybody else is wrong and they are the ones that are right.
Well, of course. Of course.
You're the smartest ones in the room.
Yes, the smartest, the strongest, the most talented, all of the most. Do you think, because I realized that my father's father, was a narcissist for sure. Do you think narcissists come from narcissists, or can?
I think that could be, as I'm sort of reflecting on my father-in-law, who I think he was a narcissist, and I haven't studied the psychology of it as much, but I think it's also a role model. Same thing with abusers. People who are abusers generally were abused as a child. So the same thing can happen with narcissists. They can be,
Right.
because they're around it, they've been bullied by their parents or their sibling or a teacher or a coach.
We watched, I think in the case of my father watched how he treated his mother. And that if that's how you treat women, I also would equate it to addiction. So
Yeah.
often it's like, my father was an alcoholic. I should have known better, but that is the behavior that was shown.
And the alcoholism, I think, is a little bit different than certainly with the narcissism and abuser situation, and is because they're the role models. Because as we get old enough, unless you just start drinking when you're 12, 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever,
It happened.
which does
Mm-hmm.
happen. But I think that you can see that you can see what goes wrong
Right.
when you have a parent that is, a narcissist or especially an alcoholic or an abuser in different ways. But yeah, I think that the role model definitely is there.
I talk about addiction a lot because my grandfather was a gambler and my father was a drug addict, or he's in recovery. I think he'll be clean this year, like 34, 35 years. It's good. It's good. But I recognize, because food was my drug. And I know that people out there that don't believe that there's food addiction, and it doesn't matter whether you believe that or not. What I know is that how I managed uncomfortable feelings, whether they were depressive feelings or high anxiety, nervousness, stress or whatever, that the way I comforted myself was with food. That's what my father did with drugs. And I'm not sure that my grandfather was managing negative and unwanted feelings with gambling, but it was a strong addiction. I feel like gamblers are very narcissistic in a way. I could just see my grandfather at the craps table. He's like a holding court at the craps table. And I remember seeing him in Vegas. I remember he gave me like a roll of quarters to go play on the slot machines, and I ran out and I went to go find him, and there he was holding court. He had two women who were like my age next to him, like, oh. And I wanted to say, you do know he's going to lose all of this. Like, I know my grandfather, this is not going to last. But I want to be careful. My grandfather is long gone. I think if he was alive, he'd be like, 120 by now. And my father is still alive, and my father and I talk about addiction a lot, and recovery and self-care. And my father is now one of the healthiest 80-year-olds I know. I talk about this on the podcast, a reminder to everyone: take care of your body. My father lives in South Florida, and on a daily basis, he gets in his car, drives to the park, puts on his roller skates, and skates around the park a couple of times, goes home. And if he gets stressed out in the middle of the workday, he gets in his car, goes back to the park, puts on his skates. He knows how to manage his feelings
Good.
in ways that do not use drugs, but it's also why he's so healthy. And it's a reminder. I talk to people all the time, like, it is about taking care of your mind, body, and soul. It's not just exercise. There are so many other things that we can be doing. And I think for so many of us, what we're feeling and experiencing that we need care for is not something we did to ourselves, but something that happened to us.
Yeah.
And that we're like you said, like, healing scars. We are healing the child, or healing the young adult, or whenever it was in our life that we were hurt in some way,
Yeah.
whether it was a narcissist or not. So what would you encourage someone who's listening and says, you know what, I don't think I'm being treated right at work, at home, by my kids? I think that's another one. I think it's not those people who are older than you all the time. It can be the people who are younger. than you that can be the narcissist. So what would you tell them to look for, and what would you tell them to do?
Well, I think first you have the awareness. One of my favorite phrases is once you are aware, you are no longer unaware. And so I think that it is important to then find the help you need. Go to a therapist or a minister. In today's world, I've seen so many weird stories about ministers. I know there's some really good ones out there, so I'm not going to throw them under the bus at all. And because one of the first people that helped me post divorce was a female Episcopal priest, and so she was my therapist initially. And so I think finding that help wherever it is that can help you then make choices, and it could be at your domestic violence outreach center. They have people there on staff that provide resources or even groups and different things. All of them are a little different. So, you need to find out what will work. There are groups here again in churches. There are groups of women that get together from time to time. Do some research, determine what you need and what you want. Do you just need support to get through this? Because a lot of women cannot leave the situation. And a lot of times it's because of the financial situation. Right. Going out on your own, and especially, with the cost of everything these days, you need to have a strong income that you can manage totally on your own. So you've got to have those resources. And for some people who are in a violent relationship, one of the things we always talked about is to pack a bag, have it in your trunk, because one day you're going to get up and decide to leave. And when you leave, that's all you have for the most part. Right. So always have your documents or copies of your documents in that bag and get the resources you need. Reach out to me, and I've got a lot of different resources to be able to provide, and other people to work with, other coaches, other EFT practitioners. And that's the thing we were talking before we started today about EFT. There are a lot of us out there, and we all do good work, and all of us have a different focus. My focus is women who have been in the narcissistic relationships or other toxic relationships, and I do work with some men. So having gone through this, that's where my focus is women. We all can refer each other to the right resource. For me, I will do my best to find the right resource for you. And I think that's what, the same thing for you, and that somebody reached out to you, you would do your best to find the right resource for them and be
And
able
if
to.
I'm not the right resource, I will let them know I'm not the right resource. There are too many, doctors, therapists, coaches, et cetera, out there that want to be able to help everybody. The wanting to help is valid, but if it's not a good fit, you have to let them find the one that's going to help them change.
One of the things I want to bring up before we sign off today is the mind clutter when you are in this narcissistic relationship. There, especially when you get out. I spent, I can't tell you how many months and years beating myself up that I did not have the courage to leave. I beat myself up for some of the things I did and did not do. And, so you've got all this chatter.
That's a lot of mental clutter. I'm so happy you're getting to your book.
Yeah.
Tell me about your book.
That book, The Chatter That Matters, Your Words Are Your Power, was written after I started my initial healing process. So in that book are steps for setting boundaries and being aware of our conversations. One of the things is we gather together as families, or especially with these holidays that are going on everywhere and gearing up, and we get together, and sometimes we only see these people once or twice a year, and we expect them to have the same conversations. So we go in with our expectations of the behaviors that are going to happen. But what if we stepped back and said, let's just see. Let's just see if Uncle Joe still tells those jokes. And so he does. But that's who he is. Give him some grace. He's just trying to be part of the family. So when we can step back and take perspective and observe, there's so much interesting things we can see and realize the dynamics when we let go of what our expectations are and our
Sure.
assumptions are, because those get us in trouble all the time.
It's so funny how we love the holidays, and the holidays bring out the best, but they can also bring out the worst in people and families. Ooh, it's a lot.
Yeah. And one of the other things in the very first part of the chatter that matters is we're talking about the negative mind chatter. And because we all have it, I thought for the longest time I was the only one because we didn't talk about this stuff. It's like other people have this going on in their heads. Yay, I'm not the only one.
They do.
A lot of us have the repetitive mind, negative thoughts. Actually, we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Out of those, 80% are negative, and 90% of those are repetitive thoughts we thought yesterday and the day before and the day before that. Observing what your negative thoughts are, writing them down. And now today, we would take those and we would tap on them to release them. Back then it was like, and what I suggested doing is once you write it down and you look at it, how can I change that into a more positive thought? And
Right.
so catching yourself and make that shift. So I say change of an affirmation or a different thought that's a more positive.
I just like the idea of journaling for, a host of reasons. But,
Yeah,
there's so much research that shows writing allows you to take a thought and remove it. And that can be helpful,
absolutely.
whether you're choosing to parking lot it or just put it on the shelf until you're ready to address that. I think there's a lot of power in what you do. And that is, I'm going to put it on paper, but I'm not going to crumble it up and throw it away and pretend it didn't happen. Instead, I'm going to figure out what the better thing to say is and how to shift from there. You talked about Chatter That Matters. Tell us about the other book.
Well, the other book is actually 1 second, I'll read it closer so you can see it. It is a journal of gratitude. So it's actually lines on a page.
Speaking of journaling.
Yeah. So for 26 years, I have almost every night of my life in those 26 years written down 3 to 5 things about this day for which I'm grateful. And some days it's a full page, and some days it's like, really, what do I have to be grateful for? And then you start thinking, well, I live here in Florida, so I am grateful for air conditioning, as one of my friends says, and there's always toilet paper. We learned during COVID. So I'm a big proponent of writing down those things. And I
100%.
do it at the end of the day because I
Mhm.
think it's an excellent way to end your
Mhm.
day and,
Do you
and
know,
being grateful.
I do my gratitude journaling in the morning. And this is just the beauty of nothing is one size fits all.
Yeah.
Every time I tried to do it in the evening, I found myself, I don't know, I felt like it was the thing that I had to do before I went to bed, as opposed to in the morning, this being the thing that sets me
Yeah.
up for the day, which means I may remember, tomorrow, I'll be saying, I'm so grateful for the conversation that I had with Margaret. This was such a great podcast episode. But if I can't remember anything, I can be like, I had a great hair. Well, I don't know if I'm having a great hair day today, but I've had those where I've just said, I had a great hair day. Boom. That's all
Exactly.
it takes. That's all it takes. So have you kept these gratitude journals or have you let them go?
Well, I have them. I have 13 gratitude journals sitting on my shelf. I started the
I
fourth.
love that. So I love that because I was cleaning out a drawer recently. We're going to go back to clutter for a second. And I was trying to decide, what I was keeping in the drawer. And one of the things that was in there, and I didn't know it was a gratitude journal from 2017. And I chose, because I didn't know it was there, to let it go after I read some of it, not all of it. I was just doing one of those, here's the book I'm using right now.
Yeah.
I did that, stopped on a page and was like, oh, I just talked about this the other day. I was grateful for Laura. It doesn't say why I was grateful for Laura. Cool. She's the person I was grateful for that day.
Yeah.
And so it
I
was
would,
nice to see it. But I just feel so strongly, removing the clutter means that I had to, sometimes you have to make hard decisions and sometimes they're easy. I think it was nice to reflect on it. I didn't need it
yeah.
long term. If I didn't live in a New York City apartment and I lived in a place bigger, maybe I would have kept it. But
Yeah.
it's not a good fit for right now.
And I've kept, I was keeping all of I don't journal every morning, but I've found that very therapeutic to get stuff off my chest. I've cried, I've
Mhm.
screamed, I've yelled, I've cursed, I've had brilliant thoughts. And the chatter that matters came out of journaling one morning. So I was
Love
keeping
that.
those notebooks because somebody said, well, your children might want to read them. And I thought, I don't think my children are going to want to read these because I've had some really straightforward conversations in here, and it might surprise them. It probably wouldn't because they know me well. But I decided, and I sat in my garage one day and I took them out and I started ripping them in half because I didn't want to throw the whole journal away because it was personal thoughts. And so it was like, so I threw half of them in the recycle bin and then, started throwing them. And because in my situation, our garbage is incinerated, I put some of them in the garbage can and added fuel to the fire.
Fuel to the fire. I love that. It's funny because the podcast that I dropped today was a conversation about clutter being unmade decisions. And
Ooh.
and so some of what I talk about were the decisions that we have to make around sentimental things, which a
Mm.
journal is. And so while I'm doing my best to let go of the journals, I am the girl who has, 10 years of yearbooks that I'm not letting go of. Like this is what I've decided. I have from 6th to 12th grade, and then I have college. That's more than 10 years of yearbooks, whatever.
Yeah.
And since my husband and I went to the same college, we do have one yearbook that we have two copies of because one is his and one is mine. But I am the person that will take the book and look at it. Or if someone mentions someone, I'll go back and look at pictures of them. Or the lunch lady from my school retired in the spring, and my girlfriends and I all went to bring her surprises and stuff like that. So of course we had the yearbooks out. And so those are things that are very special to me, but we get to decide what we're keeping. So tell me,
Exactly.
okay, so I may not have warned you, but I do this with every guest before we finish up. I ask them what is their clutter, whether it's digital or calendar or emotional or mental or physical. What is, and if I can define clutter as something that gets in the way of us being able to do something, then it could be in any form. So what would you say your clutter is?
Well, I could almost say all of the above. The things that probably that yes, I've been actually removing old emails. Like my God, 3,000 emails, and I haven't even looked at the sent ones. So getting rid of those. But I think the clutter that is showing up right now is all the yarn I have. I like to knit. And
Oh.
and I have, my sister died several years ago and she was an avid knitter as well. She made hats for the homeless and she and
Mm.
several women in her church group did. So yeah, I took almost all of her yarn. So it's been an interesting situation, but I was able to clean out a shelf in my guest room closet. I had a little bookcase in there. I was able to clear out old office supplies. And now one of those bins that has her yarn in it and her needles, she had every size knitting needle you can imagine. So they're safely stored in there. But I'm working on some knitting projects.
Well, didn't you say you're starting to sell some of your knitting projects?
I am going
So is
to, going to. So I've got working, going to, if I can get, looking at the vendor agreement shortly with a local store where they have vendors that can sell, whatever their wares are. And I eventually will definitely have an Etsy store. But yeah, I've made a lot of scarves. And yeah, people say you live in Florida, Margaret. Well, occasionally we wear them. Almost everybody that lives in Florida has somebody that lives north.
or visit places
Yeah.
in the north. You don't always get to come during some. If a wedding is in February, you have to come, right?
Well, and exactly, but even here, my brother-in-law lives in Tallahassee. I go there. I'm going up in a few weeks to football games and things. There is nothing like sitting at a football stadium when the wind is blowing like, and it's, I know 50 degrees does not sound like very cold to a lot of people, but for a Floridian, darn cold. And plus, I made a dog sweater the other day, so I'm really excited about that. And I made a dog toy that was supposed to be shaped like a bone, but it was rather wonky. So maybe one dogs might get that one. And, so I think, that's some of the stuff I love to do. When I had several friends going through breast cancer treatments and chemotherapy and losing their hair, I would make them a hat so they could wear that, from time to time rather than, the other scarves or other hats. And
Sure.
that made me happy.
That's great. I don't think your yarn is clutter. Any last thoughts that you would like to leave listeners with today?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I've loved our discussion. The last thoughts are just be aware of the people that you are surrounded with. Set your boundaries. And you don't have to put up with other people's shit. And you
You
can,
couldn't have said that more perfectly.
because people will treat you as you allow. So if you don't like the way you're being treated, then try to make some changes or reach out for help, because we have one life. And my tagline is, I do the work that I do, so the rest of your life is the best of your life.
Right. I love that, Margaret. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.